Hi, my name is Emyron. I am autistic, half Swede, half Arabic, and I'm also genderqueer.
Hello, my name is Oliver and I'm a trans guy who make videos about LGBTQIA+ people where they get to talk about anything that they want that somehow relates to them being queer. I was contacted by Emyron, who wanted to share their experience of being genderqueer, having autism and growing up in a Muslim family. Let's start from the beginning.
When I was a kid, I, for the longest time, didn't actually understand anything about when it came to identity or gender or anything like that. I just understood one thing, and that was that something was wrong with me. And for the longest time, I thought I was a trans man. When I came to know more about the LGBTQ and everything, and just hanging out with other people who have either come out as trans males themselves or trans women, and I just thought, this sounds a lot like what I'm feeling, but not quite. So is it what I am or is it not? So for the longest time I wanted people to try to use male pronouns on me. It felt right, but the whole idea of transitioning was just not quite right for me, because some days I felt very happy with my femininity. Some days I wanted to be more masculine presenting, and I just felt like I don't really know where I fit in, because this is probably not how a trans man should feel. I don't know. I just felt very unsure. And then I learned about the term genderqueer, and somehow it clicked. Not that I was it, but like, this is all right in a way. And I slowly took turn getting to know the label and what genderqueer was and what non-binary was. After some time I decided to start saying that I was genderqueer, and that just felt right.
And this is what their family situation was like when they grew up.
The whole thing about growing up in a biracial family is that you get a lot of culture shock. And for the longest time I didn't actually know what it felt like being a Swede. I didn't know what it felt like to be a Swedish citizen, because my family was a lot like we should celebrate different festivities and such that we have in Islam. And that also came with a lot of the culture that my mother took from Algeria. So I didn't do exactly everything that the other kids did and everything. It was not till, well, maybe like 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, that I started to actually take more interest in Swedish culture and just try to observe things around me and what it feels like to be a Swedish citizen, rather than being from Algeria in Sweden, I guess. I'm starting to feel more comfortable with my identity as both Swedish and Arabic. But when I was like maybe 18, 19 years old, I stopped being a Muslim altogether. I had nothing against the religion at all. It was just not a path that I felt like I wanted to take. It was not important in my life. I had a lot of difficulties growing up as a Muslim when I was a kid. And after 9/11 happened, things also took a different turn due to the fact that, sure, it didn't affect Sweden that much, but people are still ignorant, and just the fact that I was a Muslim was enough to scare them. So at that time, school was very tough. Being around friends even was very tough.
This is what it was like for Emyron to grow up as a queer Muslim.
Growing up as queer and Muslim was hard, both for me internally, because I felt like I was doing something wrong, and also because I more and more started getting into just trying to figure out who I was and what that meant. It was hard because I felt I had to hide everything. Most of my family members already know that I'm very queer. I came out to my dad when I was younger as bisexual at the time, and he just looked me in the eye and said, well, you're weird in all kinds of ways, why not this also? And then we just laughed. And it was just his way of saying, it's okay, I don't care, you can be whatever. I haven't come out to my mother, but I'm pretty sure that she knows in some way. But during the time I was living with her when my parents were separated, I had to hide the fact that I had a girlfriend. We kept it very secret, so it's like only my friends knew about this. And I could never tell my mother about this because she would never accept it and she refuses to understand. So I just didn't feel safe enough to come out or just be myself, or even acknowledge that, well, this other girl was in the picture. So I hid it for the longest time, and then I fell in love with a guy after my girlfriend and I separated, and then suddenly it was so much easier to hide because you could hide without being hidden in a way, because you were presenting as being in a very straight relationship, which is more acceptable.
Emyron got an education that made it hard for them to accept their queer identity.
I was taught that there's only men and women, and they should be together, not men and other men or women and other women. And I didn't even know about non-binary people at the time. So when I started to hang out more with people that were gay and bisexual and even trans, I started to have this mental conflict with myself about it's okay that they're doing that as long as I'm not doing it. But then suddenly I started to have feelings for this girl and just started to see girls in another light. And it was like, oh, am I doing something wrong? What is wrong with me? I can't do this. I'm a Muslim. I can't do this. I didn't realize at the time that you could be both a Muslim and you can be queer as well.
Something else that's a big part of Emyron's life is their autism.
I think I was like maybe 13, 14, something like that, when I got my autism diagnosis, and everything just made sense. Because I was very black and white in everything I did. Because either it is or it is not, which is not at all how I am today, because I defy that a lot by doing stuff that makes me uncomfortable, that makes me happy in the moment, not so much preparing for it. And when I understood that I was genderqueer, I just felt scared, because I think, like most autistic people, we feel like we need a sense of clarity, someone who tells us either that this is the way you do it and this is not the way you do it. But when it comes to gender and sexuality, it's very fluid and you go with whatever you feel is right. And that made it just harder for me at the time to grasp everything that was going on with me, and I just didn't feel very comfortable all the time saying that I was non-binary, because I felt like a fraud, because I didn't know much, or I felt like I feel like this, but the other people don't feel like this. They have a completely different experience. Then maybe it's me who is the problem? Then maybe I am the one in the wrong? That is basically the experience I have with most things in my life due to my autism. So being autistic and being queer was a struggle, and it is still a struggle. I still don't know where I fit. I know where I can rest for a bit and just think about it, which is why I feel very comfortable saying I'm genderqueer, because I get time to just be me and see where life takes me. You don't have to live by all of these labels, and you don't have to define yourself as something, but being autistic, and this is only my experience of course, but being autistic, for me, I feel more comfortable with certain labels here and there. It might not always make sense on which labels needs to be there, and other labels, you don't even need to talk about them, but in my head it all makes sense.
Emyron wants to end the video by sharing a message to everyone who's watching.
What I wish other people would know is that your identity and your sexuality doesn't have to be in conflict with your beliefs. That's just another part of you, of yourself, of your personality, of what makes you you. And even though I didn't become the Muslim that I thought I would be in the future, I still believe that other people that are queer can still practice their beliefs and still be queer. There should be no one saying that you shouldn't be allowed to do this because you're not normal. No one is normal. Everyone should just be able to practice whatever they believe because it's not their business. What I do is my business. As long as I don't hurt anyone, why should anyone care? In my case, especially other Muslims that feel like they are queer or they're undeciding or whatever, they should be able to figure that out in peace and still be considered a Muslim and just be who they are.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!